basically, that are still here. A lot has happened in the last 12 months, chiefly Israel's genocide in Gaza, but also across the Middle East, in Yemen, Lebanon, also Iran. In this session, we're going to be looking at what has happened, what is likely to happen next, what the role of the US, Britain and the other Western players is, which of course follows with the question of what our resistance needs to look like. We're joined by 4 speakers who will each have up to 8 minutes, and I'll then come to you guys for questions and discussions. I'd first like to welcome activist and academic, presenter and of course poet, the wonderful Michael Rosen.
I'll begin with a sort of poem. Spare a thought for the American government. With great wisdom and compassion, they've talked of red lines, they've talked of their great concerns, they've explained how they've been troubled and that they're saddened that Israel has just ignored them. Imagine how bewildered the Americans must be. Some of us are parents. We know how it hurts when our children defy us. Think of the pain they must be going through to hear of yet another red line has been crossed. There is only one remedy for this agony: supply more bombs. Doctors gather round the sick government ministers. Send more fighter planes, send more guns, send more drones, they say, and it works. All that suffering that those ministers have been going through evaporates. It lifts, fades. Another day dawns. The sun shines so clearly that the cries and screams rising from the rubble and ruins don't reach the ears of those poor government ministers. And we out there in the world are supposed to believe this play acting. We're supposed to believe that all this is without intent, without purpose, without a forethought. We're supposed to believe that there is no plan, no idea that the Americans might think that they are rearranging the map of the Middle East to suit their interests. Thanks very much. Thank you. So, after the demonstration, the last big demonstration in London, I sat down and wrote a piece which I chucked up on my blog and various other links to, and I thought I was going to read it to you, revised by people who've passed their various comments on it, including Chris and some others. But I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll read it naked, not me, the piece, and I'll read it naked as it is, without their criticisms, and it is really just exactly as we've heard from the chair, as a suggestion, a set of suggestions for discussion, a set of ideas, because that's what today is about. So no matter what criticism you have on it, that's what it's there for. So as I wrote, I was on the demonstration today and listened to the speeches. I think that plenty of people are getting it a bit wrong. I don't think that the US and the UK are, quotes, complicit with what Israel is doing. I don't think the US and the UK are, quote, collaborating. I don't even think that the US and the UK are, quote, supplying arms. To me, these words don't explain what has happened this last year, and of course is happening right now. For those words to make sense, complicit, collaborate, supply, would suggest that the US and the UK are doing Israel a favour, or are leaping in to help Israel. But objectively, the US and its allies have gone beyond being complicit, collaborating and supplying. The vast tonnage of bombs, the massive use of US aircraft, drones, munitions and high-tech backup can, to my mind, only be interpreted as the US and allies, including us, doing this for its own reasons. What's going on is an enactment of US policy. If I'm right, and I accept I may not be, it would mean a realignment of how we view what's going on. It would mean dropping the pretense that the US is a mediator, or a supporter, even. What's going on would not be a matter of Israel drawing up new boundaries, or Israel carrying out mass slaughter, widening the area of conflict to include all the surrounding areas, but it would be US policy. It would mean us seeing what's going on as stages in how the US would like the Middle East to be this year, next year, and for the next years. That's what I'm suggesting. If true, this would take me to thinking ahead to something else. Many of the US administration now accept that the Iraq war, for example, was a mistake. Not all of them, but many of them. It was a sudden, unprovoked, blitz-type war. Perhaps the US is envisaging something different this time. A long-term war fought in terms of constant small-scale warfare against Iran and its allies, exhausting and crushing them under the weight of superior, almost inexhaustible firepower. You could question that, whether it's inexhaustible. Unlike the Iraq War, this time the US has a skilled, experienced, highly motivated ally on the ground. No, not like the decaying corrupt puppets of the South Vietnam government. I'm old enough to remember all that. But an ideological force, Israel, whose views hold sway in most of the Western governments and Western populations. But to the point, they're there, on the ground, ready and able to do the bombing, to seize the land, and importantly, to justify it. Behind all this lies a question: why? Surely this can't feasibly be, as people like Douglas Murray insist it is, about values, or as they put it, Judeo-Christianity versus Islam. Would a modern state feasibly spend billions on fighting for Christianity against Islam? Well, you could argue about that. There are 20 million Christian Zionists in America who all voted for Trump, who all think that me and my fellow Jews are all supposed to rush off to Israel, where I think what's going to happen is the Messiah is going to come again. Remember he came last time, he's coming again. And when he comes again, I think all we Jews, we've got to convert, and if we don't, we're put to the sword. So this isn't anti-Semitic in any way at all. We're going to be put to the sword, and then the rapture is going to happen. Not the rapture, some people call it the rapture, it's a mistake. The rapture, and we're all going to go up to heaven. And people voted for Trump because, yes, don't laugh, they believe this is going to happen. And it's not at all anti-Semitic because Netanyahu supports it. Just explaining that for you. Anyway, there must be, I argue, there must be material reasons lying behind this onslaught, which the ideological stuff about values, or indeed this Christian Zionism stuff, can be used to justify what's going on. Clearly, the Middle East holds within it vast resources. We know that the US and allies know that they need or have some control over its production and distribution. In addition is the power of what we've come to call the military-industrial complex. So Chris, in his notes to me, he wasn't quite so sure about this. Built into the US government and economy is this huge chunk of never-ending production and profit-making. What we call tech is a huge part of this complex too. So the military-industrial complex has expanded to mean the whole of the tech stuff, all this modern stuff. Gates and the whole idea of the new tech, digital tech. In one sense, the US administration and government serves the purpose of making sure that the military-industrial complex gets its contracts, uses up its products, that's to say the guns, bombs, planes, drones, and indeed the tech, gets new contracts, on and on and on. In other words, when the government commits to war, it gives the complex what it wants. It's not only me saying that, it was in fact Eisenhower who first said that in the 1950s. So coming back to where I started, I think we're getting it a bit wrong if we ever say the United States of America, is complicit or collaborating. Instead, we should think of a new way. We should think always of talking about it in terms of America pursuing or driving or carrying out war or wars in the Middle East, informed by what didn't work before, like Vietnam, like Iraq, like Afghanistan, trying to make this one, or these ones, work better. They are pragmatists, these people, so they know that they screwed up Vietnam, Afghanistan and the rest. So they're trying to make it work better, and they have no, if you like, better ally than Israel to do that. Ally, I use the word ally, and maybe I'm wrong. And if we turn that round 180 degrees, it means that in effect, the Palestinians are fighting against the mercenary forces of the US. That's how I see it. I understand why the left has tended to construct Israel or Zionism and Zionists as the enemy, but I'm now of the feeling that this is a bit misleading. Thinking of what's going on in that way draws us into how Israel and Zionism sees it. In other words, a local fight for the self-determination of the Jews. That's all in inverted commas. Yes? I see the left dragged into endless arguments about the nature of the Israeli state, the origins of Zionism, or the nature of the Balfour Agreement. I have, over many, many years, been drawn into arguments about that. I'm now of the view, even if that was all relevant before, I think it's either no longer relevant or less relevant. What's going on now is in fact much more like the Vietnam War, other than that US pilots are not actually flying the planes, and US men and women are not, quote, on the ground. They don't need to be, because the aims and objectives of the people who are on the ground or in the planes are a perfect match for the aims and objectives of the US, with none of the flakiness of, say, the South Vietnamese regime. So I think of it more as a coincidence, not in the lucky sense or a chance sense, but a coincidence of interests. But that's a phrase that is in my mind. That's what's going on. A coincidence of interests between the ultras in Israel, Ben Gvir, Smotrich and Netanyahu, and the ultras in the new, or not necessarily particularly ultras, in the American regime. As I say, this is only me thinking aloud. I know there are strong disagreements with this view. I know there are people who prefer something more nuanced, and I accept that it may have been more nuanced in the past. However, this is my view where we are now as of 2024. So thanks very much. That's my contribution today.